Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest when you see someone posting what seems to be a perfect life on social media? It feels like no matter how hard you try, it's never enough. The truth is that many of these people, often driven by narcissistic traits, use these platforms as a stage to emotionally manipulate others, seeking constant validation and control. Before you know it, you might find yourself trapped in a toxic cycle of comparisons, doubts, and feelings of inadequacy. But what if I told you there's a way to protect your mind from this digital whirlwind? Yes, I'm talking about something ancient, powerful, and incredibly relevant today: Stoicism. Philosophers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius taught that internal control over our emotions is the key to achieving unshakable mental peace, even when surrounded by chaotic external influences. Imagine transforming that discomfort into emotional freedom. In this text, we'll explore how narcissists operate on social media, the traps they create, and most importantly, how Stoicism can be your best weapon in this invisible battle. You'll learn practical strategies to set digital boundaries, cultivate gratitude, and strengthen your emotional resilience. This journey goes far beyond simple well-being tips. We're talking about a profound transformation in how you view the online and offline world. What makes all of this even more fascinating is that, by mastering these principles, you not only protect yourself but also gain a rare clarity of mind, the kind of unshakable calm in the face of life's storms. Get ready to discover how strategic silence can neutralize even the subtlest attempts at manipulation, and how philosophical indifference can become your greatest ally against manipulative criticism and praise. Are you ready to take the first step toward your emotional freedom? Throughout this content, I'll guide you through daily reflections, practical examples, and philosophical insights that will help you build an emotional armor capable of withstanding the toxic dynamics of social media. So, take a deep breath and embark on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. If we stop to observe, it's striking how social media has become fertile ground for narcissistic behaviors. These platforms are designed to attract attention, and those with narcissistic tendencies know very well how to exploit them to the fullest. They post perfect photos, impactful quotes, and stories that seem like movie scripts. But behind this charming facade often lies the intention to emotionally manipulate others, seeking constant validation and control. Have you ever stopped to think about how this affects your own mind? This need for approval isn't new, but on social media, it takes on a new dimension. A narcissist might use strategic comments or even calculated silence to toy with your emotions. For example, someone might like only the posts that put you in the spotlight while ignoring others that don't serve their purpose. This subtle game of criticism and praise creates emotional dependency that, little by little, erodes your self-confidence. Stoicism teaches us to see these tactics as external events over which we have no control. But why do they do this? Well, deep down, narcissistic behavior is fueled by insecurity. They constantly need to prove something, whether to themselves or others. So, they create this edited version of reality to maintain the illusion of superiority. However, this initial facade soon gives way to toxic behaviors, such as subtle attacks on your confidence or attempts to bring you down. It's like a vicious cycle that only benefits them. The good news is that you can learn to identify these patterns before they deeply affect you. Pay attention to how certain people alternate between moments of exaggerated closeness and sudden distancing. This is a clear attempt to create emotional instability. By applying Stoic concepts such as focusing on internal control, you can neutralize these fluctuations. Epictetus reflected on this when he said, "It's not the events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." Another important point is understanding that social media is a tool, and it's up to us to decide how to use it. If you notice that you're falling into the trap of comparing your life to the filtered versions of reality others present, it's time to rethink your digital habits. Remember that practicing gratitude for what you have is a powerful way to combat this type of influence. Instead of seeking external approval, focus on what truly matters to you. Finally, it's worth reflecting on how these dynamics might be shaping your own mindset. Have you unknowingly adopted some of these behaviors yourself? The daily practice of self-reflection, typical of Stoicism, can help identify these patterns. When you start strengthening your emotional resilience, it becomes much easier to resist external pressures and maintain your mental peace intact. Now imagine applying this in your day-to-day life. How would it be different? Now that we better understand how narcissists operate on social media, it's time to explore a powerful tool to protect ourselves: Stoicism. This ancient philosophy, developed by thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, offers practical strategies for dealing with emotional manipulation and maintaining our mental peace intact. After all, we can't control what others do, but we can decide how we react. One of the most valuable lessons of Stoicism is the separation between external events and our internal reactions. For example, when someone posts something with the intention of destabilizing you or making you feel inferior, remember, it's just an external event. You have the power to choose whether or not to let it affect you. Marcus Aurelius often reflected, if something is hard to bear, it's not the event itself, but your interpretation of it. This can be directly applied to the toxic dynamics of social media. Another powerful practice is focusing on internal control. Often, we waste energy trying to change others' behavior or seeking validation in likes and comments. However, Stoicism teaches us that we should only invest energy in what is under our control. So, instead of worrying about what others are thinking or posting, focus on cultivating your own gratitude and emotional strength. This creates a mental armor capable of withstanding any manipulative criticism or praise. Imagine starting each day with a simple reflection. What are the things that really matter to me? This daily exercise helps strengthen your mental clarity and avoid unnecessary distractions. When you connect with your deepest values, it becomes much harder to be influenced by people who are only seeking attention or control. Additionally, practicing strategic silence by ignoring provocations is an effective way to neutralize attempts at manipulation. On the other hand, it's important to remember that Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions but rather managing them in a healthy way. By recognizing feelings like anger or frustration caused by malicious criticism, you can use them as triggers for growth. Philosophical indifference, in this case, doesn't mean apathy but emotional freedom. You free yourself from the burden of reacting impulsively and begin responding with wisdom. Finally, think of Stoicism as a shield you carry with you, especially in digital interactions. It helps you set clear boundaries and filter what enters your mind. By practicing strategic silence and focusing on internal control, you not only protect your self-esteem but also gain a new perspective on what truly matters. And what if I told you that this transformation begins today? What would your life look like if you started applying these principles now? One of the most common games narcissists play on social media is the cycle of criticism and praise. This manipulative strategy is like an emotional roller coaster, designed to keep you trapped in a constant state of emotional dependency. First, they shower you with exaggerated praise, making you feel special and valued. But as soon as you start trusting, the criticisms come out of nowhere, often disguised as suggestions or even jokes. This behavior creates a dangerous dynamic because it directly hits your self-confidence. When you receive praise from someone you admire or respect, it's natural to want to maintain that approval. However, when the criticisms appear, you may feel confused, questioning whether you truly deserve that initial recognition. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. By recognizing these fluctuations as external events, you strip them of their emotional power over you. Epictetus reflected on this when he said, "It's not the events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." But how do you apply this in practice? Imagine that someone comments positively on one of your photos but then makes a negative observation on another post. Instead of reacting impulsively or internalizing these comments, remember that they don't define who you are. Stoicism teaches us to maintain mental peace by focusing on what's under our control, our own perceptions and reactions. In this way, you neutralize the impact of this toxic cycle. Another important point is understanding that this game of criticism and praise is all about emotional manipulation. The narcissist seeks to create a one-sided emotional connection. They are always in control. By alternating between moments of closeness and distance, they keep you trying to please them. But by adopting philosophical indifference, you regain control of the situation. Ignoring these fluctuations not only strengthens your emotional resilience but also disarms the manipulator, who depends on your reactions to feel powerful. Now think about it, how many times have you let yourself be carried away by this kind of behavior? Maybe you've spent hours analyzing an apparently innocent comment, trying to figure out if there was something hidden behind it. Daily reflection can help identify these patterns before they deeply affect you. By cultivating gratitude for what you have and focusing on your own growth, it becomes much easier to resist the traps of this cycle. Finally, imagine how liberating it would be to stop worrying about what others think or say about you. When you learn to handle criticism and praise with balance, you gain a rare mental clarity, the kind of emotional freedom we all seek. And what if I told you that this skill can be developed gradually, starting today? What would your life look like if you could navigate social media without being shaken by this manipulative game? If you've ever found yourself losing hours on social media, consumed by useless arguments or even sucked into drama created by narcissists, know that this is no coincidence. Digital platforms are designed to keep us connected, and often trapped. in interactions that can be emotionally exhausting. That's why setting clear boundaries is essential to protect your personal space and avoid emotional manipulation. Setting digital boundaries starts with a simple reflection. How much time and energy do I want to dedicate to social media? This question may seem basic, but it has a profound impact. By setting concrete limits, like turning off unnecessary notifications or scheduling specific times to check your feeds, you regain control over your routine. Stoicism supports this practice because it emphasizes focusing on what truly matters. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, life is short. Don't waste time on things that don't contribute to your mental peace. Another important step is learning to mute or block toxic people without guilt. Yes, it may sound drastic, but it's a powerful way to create a healthier digital environment. Remember, you don't owe anyone an explanation for your decisions. If someone is causing you discomfort or trying to manipulate you, using strategic silence by simply distancing yourself is a smart choice. This isn't a lack of empathy, it's self-defense. Philosophical indifference, in this case, serves as a tool to filter what enters your mind. Additionally, think about how social media can be used more intentionally. Instead of aimlessly scrolling, focus on content that truly adds value to your life. Follow inspiring profiles, participate in positive communities, and practice gratitude for the genuine connections you build online. By doing this, you transform these platforms from sources of stress into spaces for growth. It's like applying a philosophical filter to your digital experience. But what if the boundaries need to go beyond the digital realm? Sometimes it's necessary to set clear limits in real life too. For example, if someone uses social media to spread gossip or create conflicts, it might be time to talk directly to that person, or simply reduce contact. Daily self-reflection can help identify these situations before they become draining. After all, your emotional energy is too valuable to be wasted. Finally, imagine living in a space where you feel fully in control of what you consume and share online. By setting digital boundaries, you not only protect your emotional resilience but also create more room to cultivate your own mental peace. And what if I told you that starting to implement these changes can be easier than it seems? What small adjustment would you make today to strengthen your digital boundaries? If you've ever found yourself caught in a heated argument on social media or trying to justify your choices to someone with narcissistic traits, you know how exhausting it can be. But what if I told you that often, the most powerful response is to say nothing? Strategic silence is an underrated but incredibly effective tool for neutralizing attempts at emotional manipulation. After all, when you don't react, you take away the fuel from the manipulator's game. Silence doesn't mean weakness. On the contrary, it's a conscious and strategic choice. When someone tries to provoke an emotional reaction, whether through malicious criticism, sarcastic comments, or even excessive praise, your response can determine the course of the interaction. By choosing not to react, you strip that person of their emotional power over you. Epictetus reflected on this when he said, "It's more necessary to discipline the mind than the tongue." This principle is especially relevant in the digital world, where every comment can be amplified. But how do you apply this in practice? Imagine that someone makes a negative comment on one of your posts. Instead of responding immediately or dwelling on those words, try simply ignoring them. This doesn't mean you're accepting or agreeing with what was said. It means you're choosing not to give energy to what doesn't deserve your attention. This practice strengthens your emotional resilience and helps keep your mental peace intact. Another benefit of strategic silence is that it completely disarms the manipulator. People with narcissistic behaviors depend on others' reactions to feel important or in control. When you don't react, they lose this source of validation. It's like cutting the wire that feeds a ticking bomb. Without a response, the potential conflict disappears. Additionally, by adopting this stance, you demonstrate emotional maturity and self-control, qualities that Stoicism deeply values. However, practicing silence doesn't mean isolating yourself or avoiding all interactions. It's about carefully choosing when and how you engage. For example, during moments of constructive dialogue, sharing daily reflections or expressing gratitude can be enriching. However, when the situation clearly seeks to destabilize you, silence is your best weapon. It also helps create space to think before acting, which is essential for making decisions aligned with your well-being. Finally, imagine living without being shaken by unnecessary provocations. By incorporating strategic silence into your digital life, you not only protect your self-esteem but also gain a new perspective on what truly matters. And what if I told you that starting to practice this can be easier than it seems? All it takes is deciding today that you won't react impulsively to attempts at manipulation anymore. What would your online experience look like if you started using silence as a shield? If you've ever caught yourself comparing your life to the edited versions of reality that people display on social media, you're far from alone. This is a common trap, especially when we're surrounded by profiles that seem to live in a perfect world. But here's the truth. These comparisons not only negatively affect your self-confidence but also divert your focus from what truly matters. Stoicism offers a powerful solution to this problem: cultivating gratitude. The key to avoiding comparisons is understanding that everyone is on their own journey, with challenges and achievements that are often invisible. That perfect vacation post or flawless selfie might hide a series of difficulties that the other person chose not to share. Epictetus reminds us that it's not what happens to us, but how we respond that defines our happiness. So, instead of being carried away by the illusion of someone else's perfection, focus on the good in your own life. Practicing gratitude is a simple but transformative way to shift your perspective. Start each day by listing 3 things you're grateful for. It could be something as simple as a warm cup of coffee in the morning or a meaningful conversation with a friend. This habit helps reprogram your mind to see the positive side of situations, even in the face of criticism or external comparisons. Additionally, Stoicism teaches us that gratitude is a way of recognizing internal control over our emotions. Another important point is remembering that the relentless pursuit of external validation will never bring lasting satisfaction. When you depend on likes, comments, or others' approval to feel good, you're handing over the power of your happiness to others. Instead, focus on your personal growth and small daily victories. Philosophical indifference to external judgments frees you to focus on what truly matters: your mental peace and emotional freedom. Now think about it. How many times have you felt dissatisfied because someone seemed to be ahead of you? Maybe it was a colleague promoted at work, a friend with a new house, or even an influencer showing an unattainable lifestyle. Instead of letting yourself be consumed by these feelings, use them as triggers to reflect on your own goals and values. Daily reflection can help identify what truly motivates and makes you happy, regardless of what others are doing. Finally, imagine living without constantly worrying about what others have or have achieved. By avoiding comparisons and cultivating gratitude, you not only strengthen your emotional resilience but also gain mental clarity to follow your own path. And what if I told you that starting this transformation is simpler than it seems? What small step would you take today to practice gratitude and celebrate your own achievements? Malicious criticisms and negative comments are like arrows launched on social media, often without a clear direction but with the goal of hurting. However, what truly determines whether these arrows will hit you isn't who fired them but how you choose to react. Philosophical indifference is one of the most powerful tools for dealing with criticism because it teaches us to recognize that the external value attributed to these attacks rarely reflects our true essence. Stoicism reminds us that criticisms, especially those coming from people with manipulative intentions, are external events over which we have no control. What is under our control is how we interpret and respond to them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The words of others are merely sounds that pass." This mindset can be liberating when you realize that others' opinions don't define who you are. By practicing philosophical indifference, you create an emotional barrier that prevents these criticisms from penetrating your mind. But how do you apply this in practice? Imagine that someone makes a negative comment about something you shared online. Instead of internalizing the criticism or trying to justify your actions, try simply observing it without excessive emotion. Ask yourself, is this criticism constructive, or is it just a reflection of the other person's insecurity? Often you'll realize that malicious comments say more about the person making them than about you. This approach strengthens your emotional resilience and helps maintain your mental peace. Another important aspect of philosophical indifference is that it completely disarms the critic. People who criticize cruelly often seek a reaction, whether anger, sadness, or even submission. When you choose not to react, you strip them of their emotional power over you. It's as if you're silently saying, "You have no control over me." This kind of silent response can be far more impactful than any argument or counterattack. However, it's crucial to remember that philosophical indifference doesn't mean ignoring valid feedback. There are moments when criticism can be useful for our personal growth. The difference lies in knowing how to filter what deserves attention and what should be discarded. Daily reflection can help in this process, allowing you to critically evaluate your actions without being shaken by unfounded judgments. Finally, imagine living without constantly worrying about what others think or say about you. By adopting philosophical indifference to criticism, you not only protect your self-esteem but also gain new emotional freedom. And what if I told you that starting to practice this can transform your experience on social media? What small change would you make today to shield yourself against unnecessary criticism? If there's one skill that can transform your life on social media and beyond, it's emotional resilience. It's the ability to face adversity, criticism, and pressure without losing your mental peace or self-confidence. And, like any muscle, it can be strengthened with consistent practice. Stoicism, with its timeless lessons on internal control and acceptance of what we cannot change, offers a powerful guide for developing this much-needed, emotional armor in today's world. Daily reflection is one of the best ways to start. Set aside a few minutes at the end of the day to evaluate your online and offline interactions. Ask yourself, how did I react to challenging situations? What could I have done differently? This simple exercise helps you identify emotional and behavioral patterns that might be leaving you vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Epictetus often said, "It's not the events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." This constant reflection is the foundation for building resilience. Another important step is learning to see challenges as opportunities for growth. For example, when someone makes a cruel comment or tries to emotionally destabilize you, see it as a chance to practice philosophical indifference or strategic silence. Each time you respond with calm and balance, you're strengthening your ability to handle similar situations in the future. Gratitude also plays a crucial role here. By being thankful for the lessons learned, even in difficult situations, you transform obstacles into steps toward evolution. However, strengthening emotional resilience goes beyond just dealing with criticism or manipulation. It's about creating a mindset that prioritizes internal well-being, regardless of what happens externally. This means setting clear boundaries, both digital and personal, and cultivating habits that promote your mental peace. Reading Stoic works, like Marcus Aurelius's Reflections and Meditations, can be an endless source of inspiration for staying focused on what truly matters. Additionally, remember that digital resilience is especially relevant today. Social media is full of toxic dynamics, from constant comparisons to direct attacks. By developing your emotional resilience, you become immune to these external pressures. You start navigating the online world with greater security, knowing that your self-esteem and emotional freedom don't depend on what others think or say about you. Finally, imagine living with unshakable confidence, knowing that you can face any emotional challenge that arises. By strengthening your emotional resilience, you not only protect your mind from narcissists and the traps of social media but also gain clarity and purpose in your personal journey. And what if I told you that starting to build this resilience can be simpler than it seems? What small habit would you adopt today to take the first step? We've reached the end of this deep dive into the universe of social media, narcissistic behaviors, and Stoic strategies to protect your mind and strengthen your emotional resilience. But before we conclude, I want to invite you to pause and reflect. How can you apply these practical ideas to your life starting today? Imagine the impact that small changes, like setting digital boundaries, practicing strategic silence, or cultivating daily gratitude, can have on your mental peace and emotional freedom. Remember that Stoicism isn't just an ancient philosophy, it's a powerful guide for dealing with modern challenges. When you choose to focus on internal control, ignore malicious criticism, and avoid unnecessary comparisons, you're creating an emotional armor capable of withstanding the toxic dynamics of social media. And this transformation begins with small steps. How about starting by setting a specific time to disconnect from social media today? Or jotting down 3 things you're grateful for before going to bed? This journey of self-discovery and personal growth doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, it never will be. What matters is constant progress and the willingness to look within yourself with honesty and courage. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, life is what your thoughts make it. So, what kind of life do you want to build for yourself? A life full of distractions and external dependencies, or a life guided by solid values and mental peace? Before we part ways, I want to extend a special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and enable notifications to stay updated on more content like this. Together, we can explore new ways to grow, learn, and face the challenges of the modern world with wisdom and balance. After all, every small action you take today shapes the future you want to create. So, tell me, what will you do differently starting now? How will you use Stoicism to protect your mind and strengthen your emotional resilience?